How do I look? Is this all okay?
Yeah, no, it's good.
Sweet, well, I'm ready when you are.
Okay, let's take it from the top. Capstone project, take 20.
My name is Elliot Kinsey, and I'm an aspiring photographer and filmmaker. From watching people like Peter McKinnon, Matty Hapoya, Peter Lindgren, I've grown a pretty big addiction to filmmaking, photography, any media work or creative work really. Whether I'm working in the field, photography, filmmaking, stuff for other people, personal projects, I enjoy the process start to finish, and I really want to make this career. It's not something that really ever gets old for me.
Creatives looking to freelance and own their own business, I found that post-secondary just isn't a necessity for most of those goals that they want to accomplish. Some goals I've set for myself are uploading every other day to Instagram to show off my photo work, as well as posting to YouTube on a bi-weekly schedule. Not only that, but I plan on updating my website every other week so I can keep up with any new work that I've done over that 2-week period. I also plan to do some free of charge work for local businesses around Ladysmith and the community. I've already done some with La Rosa Gardens, but I plan to do a little bit more work to get my name more prominent in the community. By the end of the grade 12, I want to build at least 2 or 3 connections with some other photographers and filmmakers in the local area so that we can bounce ideas off of and potentially even work together on a few shoots. And lastly, I want to have my first official brand deal on my YouTube channel by the end of Q2 2023. I know it's not a necessity to have brand deals on YouTube and to work with other creators, but it's kind of that milestone part for me, at least, to really know that I've made it and I've made a difference on the platform, knowing that other brands are seeing my work and wanting to show off their product with me. All of these smaller short-term goals build to one main big goal of being able to consistently and reliably book clients and gigs and bring in enough money to support myself. That will of course take some sacrifices, but if my work is being shown to other people, then I consider that to be a win for myself and the business. I want to be able to spend full time on filmmaking and photography, but if I have no money coming in, then how can I buy the gear that I need to purchase? I know gear isn't everything, but sometimes a lack of gear can be a limitation. Now, I'm getting cold, so let's go for a walk. Can't forget you. When it comes to my personality and the things that I value, they've got me to where I am now and to what I want to do in career. With photography and filmmaking and creative work and media work, they are the building blocks of what I've done thus far. These values are perseverance, ambition, creativity, and generosity. Now, my last year of school has been pretty tough, and I've really had to pivot what I want to do for a career. Originally, I wanted to be an RCAF pilot, and then I went to electrician, and now we're at photography. Now, the reason I've chosen photography is it's something that I'm really passionate about. It's something that I really enjoy doing. Of course, some days are going to be better than others, but that's just how it is. I'm 100% willing to put everything I have into this career. Even if the pay isn't as great in the beginning, it'll be worth every minute of it. Ultimately, if you enjoy the work that you do, it doesn't feel like you've worked a day in your life. It really just feels like you're working on the hobbies that you already have and you're just having some fun. Speaking of which, this scene is beautiful, so I'm gonna go take some photos. As a photographer and filmmaker trying to make it work, creativity is one of the main values of my workflow. Without it, the images produced would be really boring and something you wouldn't want to look at. Creativity, of course, takes time to learn, but over time, it's something that'll just be second nature to you, something that you just do automatically when starting that creative process. And it takes someone who can bend the rules of traditionalism to find that new way of looking at something. Now let's talk about that last value. Generosity is something that everybody should have in their tool belt of values. Without generosity, there's so many programs nowadays that are not for profit that just wouldn't function without it. Now, as a quick game, when you think of someone being generous or generosity, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Many people, when they think of the word generous or generosity, they think of monetary generosity, which counts, don't get me wrong, but there's more to it than just that. When I think of generosity, I also think of what's the best way that I can serve somebody else. Sometimes that is money, but other times it's with my time and my skills.
That being said, I can't just do free shoots all the time if I'm trying to live off this wage. So let's talk money for a minute. Taking into account housing, studio space, and gear that I'll need to purchase as my business progresses, I'll have a lot more monthly expenses than I have now as a high school student. My monthly income will be a combination of my current part-time job as well as any money brought in from MeClick Media. I'll be working 4 8-hour shifts a week at Bayview Brewing Company, and the rest of my time will be spent working on my own business. A rough income of $2,048 a month from Bayview without tips, and an estimated $500 a month in the beginning of MeClick Media will bring my gross monthly income to $2,548. My $500 monthly estimate is based on booking a minimum of 4 shoots a month at my current rates. This number will ideally grow over time as my name gets more prominent in the public, allowing for less hours at Bayview and more photo and video gigs. Because self-employment doesn't always mean a consistent paycheck, there'll be some savings happening. Out of my monthly income, 20% of it is going to be going into a savings account. 10% will be going into a savings for a rainy day, and the other 10% will be going into a long-term savings. The rainy day savings is for times when money is really tight and an unexpected expense comes up that a regular wage just isn't going to cover. The long-term savings, on the other hand, is, well, it's in its name. It's for things in the further future. To visualize how I can afford to live comfortably and still fund my business, I've made a rough expense versus income budget. We've already established how much money I'll roughly be bringing in on a monthly basis, so let's talk about how much of that goes to non-savings expenses. Housing expenses are the first on our list. I'm fortunate enough to be able to live at home for the first year or two post-grad. I'm expected to still keep up the household chores as well as pay a reduced rent fee on a monthly basis. This fee would be somewhere in the ballpark of $500 a month, covering all the facilities of the house, food, water, and any subscription services that are already being paid for. The next big section of expenses is transportation. I've chosen to own an older vehicle that has easily accessible parts for purchase. This keeps the repair and maintenance costs down, budgeting for $100 a month, understanding that some months will be greater and others will be less. But without gas, this car isn't going anywhere. As gas prices come and go as often as Mr. Hardy's back problems, I've chosen to budget for $200 a month in gas. Now, this may sound like a lot, but if I break it down, it may make a little bit more sense. I've made the assumption that gas will be back up to $2 a liter next year. Multiplying that by a 50-liter tank, you'll get $100 a fill. Assuming I fill up twice a month, that'll bring my monthly cost to $200 a month. This is of course a budget on the higher end of cost for the year, but estimating your expenses to be higher and your income to be lower will allow for a little bit more breathing room in the difference. The final big cost of owning a vehicle is unfortunately insurance. With ICBC being the proverbial thorn in my side, insurance costs a lot. I've estimated that my insurance will go up to $120 a month from my current $79 a month after the last year of L insurance runs out in October 2023. After taking all of the income and all the expenses, we get a total profit, or difference, of $538.60. This is money that I can either further put away for savings or spend on a lunch out with some friends.
When it comes to achievements I've had in my career, there have been many to date. Through the Canadian Cadet Program, I've taken the required courses to be a certified cadet correspondent. This means I take care of any media work that my squadron or the CCO requires. This includes, but is not limited to, social media posts, videography, photography, and connecting with local news outlets to get them invited to various events that we host. This has gotten me shown on various news outlets around town, as well as on various social media platforms of the CCO. Not only that, but I'm a 2-time recipient of the Media Award for exemplary work in showing off the CCO through digital means. Seeing my work all over the Bethel Church website, social media, and paper handouts is one of my greatest achievements. After only working on my photography skills for just about a year, the church asked if I'd be able to bring my camera and my skills to a Sunday service. It's such a great feeling seeing your work out in the public for people to see. Through the work I did with the church, that landed me my first paid gig. There's a family at the church that was looking to get some Christmas photos done. They saw the kind of work that I can produce, and they asked me if I'd be willing to do a shoot for them. Well, of course I said yes, because I'd be dumb if I didn't. They got 15 photos out of it, and I got the best memory of my life. life. Having people who don't really know me or my work thoroughly pleased by the mini doc I produced in just under 2 weeks is one of the greatest feelings ever. As mentioned prior, it took me just under 2 weeks to research, script, film, edit, and produce a 15-minute mini doc on Art Williams, The Wizard of Ladysmith. 5 hours and 106 gigabytes of total footage, one whole sleepless night, and a very exhausted Elliot later, I had a 100% mark to my name. I would say I probably learned more in those 2 weeks of that project than I did in my last 2 years of YouTube. The last 6 months, I've spent some time looking into what it would take to be a photographer, filmmaker on the freelance side of things. Most of this research was done by having conversations with people that have already worked that field or are currently working in it. I've talked with people like Jaden White, Ross Radcliffe, Evan Brandt. These are all people who I met through social media or other connections that I've made. Jaden is a photographer and filmmaker that I met over social media. I met him last year and we've had lots of discussions about what gear you need and what gear is worth just saving your money on. He's taught me a lot about that you don't need the biggest, best gear on the market to produce a good image. And that's what I tell my viewers on YouTube. You don't need the most expensive stuff. Evan is a photographer, filmmaker, and social media influencer that I met over Instagram. Same as Jaden. He's taught me a lot about what it would take and how he went from working full-time at one job to working full-time in the creative media space. He's taught me that it's not necessary to cut your part-time job off cold turkey, but it can actually be useful to keeping a part-time job on while trying to make it in the media space. That means ideally over time I can lessen my hours at my part-time and raise the amount of work I'm getting through my business. Ross Radcliffe is a documentary filmmaker and cinematographer that I met through Mr. Hardy. He's worked on many big shows like Gold Rush and Alaska: The Last Frontier. Ross has been someone who I can go to for tips on freelancing and getting your name out in the media space. Ross has been an incredible help on guiding me through the first steps in my journey. I also briefly had a conversation with a Royal Canadian Air Force recruiting officer. As a backup plan, I've considered going to the Air Force as an image tech. This would be a lot of the same work, but just in the Air Force. Not to mention, I also get to use some pretty cool multi-million-dollar imaging equipment. That aside, he told me that any work I've previously done, whether photo or video, can be put in a portfolio to heighten my chances of getting into that program. Even if eClick Media doesn't quite work out how I'd expected it to, that doesn't mean it was all to waste. There's a couple things I've done to put all of these things to practice and to learn these skills physically. The first of which was shooting stuff for Bethel Church Ladysmith. That allowed me to really hone in on my abilities to shoot event-style shots, as well as work in low light. Not only that, but it allowed me to figure out how to properly send files to clients. So being in a situation that wasn't super high risk if I wasn't able to get the files in directly on time was a great way to learn how to properly figure out a good workflow to send files to clients. And finally, going back to how I shot my first paid gig, that allowed me to learn how to properly direct a shoot. Up until then, I'd only done event-style stuff where I was kind of in the background shooting it as it was happening. So that allowed me to work on those abilities, and if I had never done that, I probably wouldn't be where I am now. Working in media, whether as a photographer or a filmmaker, is a passion of mine. From the first day I picked up a camera, I was hooked. Starting eClick Media has and continues to be a really good way to challenge myself and my creative side to be the best creative that I can be. Now that's a lot of work, but that's work worth doing.